My wife's family company went public, and her heart changed with it. She probably felt that the Martinez family support no longer mattered. She began to reminisce about her first love. The new junior assistant she hired became the perfect stand-in. I smiled. Since you like him so much, how could I possibly refuse to indulge you? Eventually, she realized that I wasn't as magnanimous, or as weak, as she thought. And later on, the junior assistant she doted on most delivered the final blow to her with his own hands. Chapter 1. I was still busy at the office when my assistant walked in, his face looking awful. President Martinez. Rubbing my temples, I looked at him with some confusion. What is it? Did something go wrong with the project? He shook his head and didn't speak. After hesitating for a moment, he handed me his phone. Puzzled, I took it. On the screen was a video. From the background, it looked like a cafe. The people in it were my wife and another man. Karen, if you don't love him, why don't you just get a divorce? The man's voice was full of grievance. Whiny, like someone playing the victim. My wife's voice sounded lazy and unhurried. Don't kid yourself, my husband can only be him. The man's eyes were filled with resentment. Then what about me? My wife gently straightened his collar. Other than that title, I can give you everything. What more could you possibly want? I turned off the video coldly, my heart filled with a silent sneer. What she couldn't give that man was something I had never cared about in the first place. My assistant had investigated thoroughly. That man was named Isaac, a junior assistant Karen had just hired into the company. A few days earlier, the Castro Group had successfully gone public. Karen Castro had attended the event with him by her side. That very day, she sent the assistant who had followed her for many years off to a branch office in another city as its general manager. She gave Isaac the assistant position, because her former assistant was from the Martinez Group. My assistant looked at me, his expression ugly. I stared out the window indifferently, saying nothing. In fact, the moment I saw Isaac earlier, along with the anger, what I felt more was a sudden clarity. At first glance, I could tell that Isaac looked very much like Karen's first love, about 70% alike, and he was deliberately imitating every single mannerism of Karen's first love. He probably knew exactly where Karen's weakness lay. Everyone in City A's upper-class social circle knows that Karen and I are considered childhood sweethearts, that we've known each other since we were in diapers, but I know very well that things between us were never as perfect as others imagined. Why did we end up together? It was nothing more than a union of interests. Back in high school, Karen fell in love. The person wasn't me. After the college entrance exam, her first love left without a word. No one knew why, and no one knew where he went. Chapter 2. Later on, I also went abroad to study. Just when I thought Karen and I would never cross paths again, she came to find me. Hector Martinez, I don't dislike you. Let's be together. Looking at the woman in front of me, I fell silent. To be honest, Karen was very beautiful, the kind of sweet, cute girl next door type. She was indeed my type. Before that, my parents had already talked to me about this matter. She knew very well that I wouldn't refuse. And just like that, we began trying to step into each other's lives. Through countless days and nights, I stayed by her side, doing my best to be a qualified boyfriend. 3 years later, we finally walked into marriage, and I personally put the wedding ring on her finger. But 3 years of feelings, along with the Martinez Group's full support, still couldn't outweigh the trace of memory buried deep in her heart. Even if the one carrying that memory was nothing more than a look-alike substitute. Though the video was short, I saw a long-lost tenderness in Karen's eyes. I knew it then, she had truly fallen for him. Since that was the case, I would grant you your wish. The Martinez family doesn't keep trash. The next morning, Karen didn't come home until early dawn. Seeing me sitting at the dining table, eating breakfast unhurriedly, completely unconcerned about why she hadn't come home all night, she froze for a moment. Then she quickly adjusted herself, acting as if nothing had happened. She even casually handed me a bag. This is a gift I picked out for you. She didn't explain her overnight absence at all, yet that gift carried a hint of guilt. In the past, unless it was Valentine's Day or some anniversary, she would never give me gifts. I smiled faintly, with a trace of mockery. Did she really think a single gift could smooth everything over? I set the gift aside. I had no intention of opening it, though she felt guilty. Seeing my attitude still made her a little unhappy, but that displeasure lasted only an instant. Seeing that I had no intention of engaging with her, and driven by guilt, she didn't argue with me and simply walked into the bedroom on her own. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Karen smiling as she opened the safe. I knew that safe, it had been there since before our marriage. There was nothing valuable inside, only fragments of memories between her and that first love. The most valuable item was merely an exquisitely designed platinum bracelet. I sneered and shook my head, not bothering to pay attention to what Karen was doing. Soon enough, a bracelet appeared on her wrist. That bracelet was their token of love from back then. She had carefully treasured it for many years. She had never once allowed me to touch it. After putting on the bracelet, Karen didn't say a word, and left the house in high spirits. I shook my head indifferently. What isn't yours will never truly be yours. Forced affection never tastes sweet, so I'll give you your freedom. Once, I thought a marriage of alliance wasn't so bad. Even though it meant completely losing my right of inheritance within the family, it was still a life tens of thousands of times better than that of ordinary people. But what I got in return was sheer ingratitude. I thought 3 years of companionship would make her learn to face reality. Yet all it took was a man who looked somewhat like her first love for her to risk offending the entire Martinez family, and choose betrayal. Chapter 3. The relationship between the Martinez family and the Castro family could only be described as average. It was simply that both families were based in City A, so we inevitably crossed paths. Ending up together was a fairly traditional marriage alliance between wealthy families. From childhood to adulthood, Karen and I had almost completely overlapping social circles. The same kindergarten, the same elementary school, then middle school and high school. It wasn't until college that our lives truly stopped intersecting. Karen was beautiful and very popular within our circle. Unlike me, I never stood out in any way and had always been more of a background character. Later on, cooperation between the two families gradually increased. Under pressure and encouragement from both sides, Karen and I started interacting a bit more. Just a bit more. We went from merely nodding acquaintances to being able to exchange a few extra words. But she was always proud. I knew she looked down on me. After all, I wasn't handsome, my grades were average, and aside from my family's money, I had no outstanding strengths. But the Castro family wasn't short on money either, and I had no intention of being a simp, throwing my dignity away for someone who didn't care. There were plenty of beautiful women in the world. Why should the second young master of the Martinez family debase himself like that? In high school, Karen's first love, Sean, appeared. He was a transfer student. The moment Sean showed up, he captured the hearts of almost all the girls. Beneath that bad boy exterior was a top student, handsome, great at basketball, and consistently ranked at the top academically. He was practically born to attract girls. Many girls pursued him, but the one who succeeded was Karen. In fact, Karen was so in love with him that she became obsessed. I still remember how, back then, Karen's pursuit of him caused a huge stir throughout the school. So many girls were infatuated with that boy. One day during lunch break, I heard a burst of shouting and cursing from girls outside the classroom. It was Karen. Worried something might happen to her, I rushed out of the classroom and ran over. I had barely arrived when I heard Karen threatening someone. "Sean is mine. You'd better know your place." As she spoke, she started fighting with a few girls beside her. Before things escalated, Sean pulled her into his arms. "Little princess, you're supposed to be a lady." I give in. Fine, I'm yours. Okay. Hearing Sean's words, Karen's face flushed red. She looked a little shy. At that moment, I knew her heart had been completely conquered by that man. Chapter 4. Life afterward remained just as ordinary, except that the classroom gained one more couple constantly showing off their affection with blatant public displays of love. Karen smiled so brightly, brighter than I had ever seen her smile growing up. The two of them were inseparable every single day, and she wouldn't part from him until Sean personally walked her home. For a time, their love story became a celebrated tale on campus. The platinum bracelet Karen treasured like a priceless heirloom was taken from Sean's wrist, but none of that had anything to do with me. Back then, I had never once imagined that anything would ever happen between Karen and me. All the changes began in the year of graduation. Sean's family went bankrupt, and Sean disappeared. No one knew where he went, only that he had gone abroad. Karen became like a soulless shell, drifting through each day in a daze. Aside from losing the men she loved, the Castro family also suffered heavy losses due to their cooperation with Sean's family. None of this concerned me. Following my family's wishes, I went abroad to study. Half a year later, she suddenly appeared at the door of my apartment. When she saw me, she cried hysterically, completely stripped of her former cold pride. She begged me to date her. To achieve that goal, she waited outside my apartment every day for an entire week. Only then did I realize that the impact of his family's bankruptcy was far greater than we had seen. The Castro family had been dragged down as well, left only one step away from collapse. I agreed to her request, not because I was soft-hearted, but because my father called me. A marriage alliance would be good for both families. If you don't dislike her, then agree. Anyway, your older brother is the heir. You should also contribute something to the family. After thinking it through all night, I agreed. At the time, I naively thought I had finally won the beauty and would live a carefree, shame-free freeloader life. Only now do I understand that she never truly forgot that man. Was Karen cold-blooded and heartless? I think so. An unforgettable first love? That doesn't exist. Romantic feelings like that mean nothing when compared to family interests. Her current behavior is nothing more than the belief that the Castro family has already weathered the crisis, and that the Martinez family is no longer as important as it once was. Chapter 5. After Karen cheated, I had my assistant keep a close watch on the two of them. Money really does make people do anything. The very night Karen left home, she moved straight into the apartment she had bought for Isaac. The photos my assistant took were thorough. Isaac and Karen were walking hand in hand, and on his wrist was a platinum bracelet, clearly the very one Karen had treasured for 3 years. Now this Isaac had completely cast himself as Sean's replacement. It wasn't just his looks. Even his gestures and the way he spoke were deliberate imitations of Sean. It seemed this man couldn't wait to take the top spot, which was understandable. The Castro Group was also one of the dominant business giants in City A. Having latched onto Karen, such a powerful backer, how could he not be pleased with himself? But did he really think the games of elite families were that simple? Chapter 6. As for Karen and Isaac, I paid them no attention at all. In fact, these past few days, I hadn't paid attention to anyone. Although I wasn't the heir of the Martinez Group, I still held considerable influence. Just because I usually stayed out of things didn't mean I could be pushed around. What I had in my hands was the project contract the Castro Group had been craving, one my older brother had given to me. I was simply considering how to use this project to make Karen pay the price. Now, I was ready. Looking out at the night beyond the office windows, I smiled, brightly, yet coldly. I handed the documents to my assistant, someone from the Martinez family whom I trusted. Young Master Martinez, Chairman Martinez wants you to take it easy and not affect cooperation between the two families. I smiled faintly. Understood. The old man even sent you over. What could he possibly still be worried about? The Martinez family was furious about this matter, but they didn't let me retaliate without restraint. The relationship between the two families was simply too deeply intertwined after all these years, no longer something that could be easily severed. Neither the Castro family nor the Martinez family would tolerate a divorce between me and Karen Castro. Even Karen herself would never agree. What's more, I had once given my all. Why should I be the one to leave in disgrace? Since Karen wanted to play mind games with me, I would help her, just like I did 3 years ago. This contract alone was enough to make the Castro family hurt badly, since Karen believed that the Castro family could now do whatever it pleased. Then I wanted to see just how wonderful her life would be after I dragged her straight into the mud. A woman who didn't even dare to go after her first love, how seriously could she possibly take a mere substitute? I scheduled the project signing for 3 days later. As for the location, it would be the Martinez Group's conference room. After all, this time I intended to force the other side to bow their heads, and it was better to keep what would be exposed within a controlled scope. Besides, this wasn't exactly something I was proud of either. Sometimes, I really wanted to know how this woman's mind worked. To actually dare to wrestle with me over some worthless fool who couldn't even show his face in polite society. I never cared whether she loved me or not. Even though I knew that another man would forever live in her heart, I still smiled calmly. What I wanted was loyalty. After all, our marriage could be considered a business contract. The Martinez family had paid the price, and during the contract period, expecting the other party to honor the agreement was only natural. Isaac's appearance wasn't just a breach of contract, it was a hard slap across my face. Karen had openly placed on another man the bracelet that bore witness to the regrets of her youth. I really wanted to ask, was the Martinez family's dignity truly worth nothing at all? Chapter 7. On the day of the signing, I saw Isaac sticking close behind Karen. He really didn't take me seriously at all. Bringing someone like that onto my home turf, she clearly hadn't considered whether she could bear the consequences of my anger. Isaac stood behind Karen. On the surface, he looked harmless enough, but inside, he was probably bursting with excitement. He pretended to check the time, but in reality, he was deliberately showing off the platinum bracelet. The bracelet was beautiful and well cared for. It was obvious that Karen cherished it deeply. That kind of affection by association was truly frightening. People are always quick to forget. Those who have grown accustomed to good times deliberately erase the memory of their lowest moments. They remember the pleasure and forget the pain. That saying fits perfectly. Hector, it's just a contract. Everything was agreed on long ago. Why did it suddenly change? And why do I have to come in person to sign it? Karen probably thought she was hiding things well, always believing she was the smartest person in the room. Looking at the woman whose brows and eyes were filled with happiness, I smiled. She was beautiful, just as beautiful as she had been 3 years ago. If there was any difference, it was that she looked even happier now. Unfortunately, nothing is more dangerous than getting carried away with success. I could already see calculation in her eyes. After years in the business world, Karen had never been ruled by emotions. There was no way she didn't understand. Isaac was nothing more than a toy, relying on a face that resembled Sean's. He was only a temporary novelty. All I could say was that Isaac was truly pitiful. Without the Martinez family lifting a finger, the Castro family alone would never tolerate him. I smiled faintly, without showing any anger. Karen, don't you know perfectly well why the project terms changed? And the gentleman standing behind you, he looks quite presentable. His face should be very familiar to you, shouldn't it? My tone was calm, as if I weren't talking about my own affairs at all. Those few words were enough to make Isaac panic. President Martinez, you've misunderstood. I'm just President Castro's assistant. How boring, not even worthy of being called a proper toy. With courage like that, he still dared to play the role of the other man. When I didn't respond, Isaac grew even more flustered. Over all these years, even if I rarely involved myself in company matters, the Martinez family's reputation wasn't something just anyone could challenge. President Martinez, I really am just President Castro's assistant. If you don't believe me, you can ask President Castro. I found it amusing. I hadn't planned to drag this disgraceful thing into today's meeting, but since he'd thrown himself into the fire, he could suffer along with it. Isaac, shut up. At the sound of Karen's voice, Isaac stiffened. His eyes filled with unease. Chapter 8. Isaac wasn't stupid. Hearing Karen speak, he finally realized the situation. The nature of his relationship with Karen was never something that could be hidden from me. Those explanations were pointless. From the moment he crossed the red line, his fate was no longer his own to decide. Karen's face was cold. She was smiling, but the anger in her eyes was impossible to suppress. She had also guessed my purpose. The contract in my hands was crucial to the Castro family. Don't be fooled by the fact that the Castro family had rung the bell and gone public. They were merely newly risen elites, not yet bold enough to openly turn against the Martinez family. Today, Isaac was destined to suffer a little, but I wasn't going to give her what she wanted. After trampling the Martinez family's dignity into the dirt, did she really expect me to sign the contract on the original terms just because we were husband and wife? Now do you understand why the contract changed? Do you need me to spell it out for you? After saying that, I couldn't be bothered to look at Karen anymore and gestured to the assistant behind me. Very soon, several tall bodyguards entered the office. The moment they walked in, they restrained Isaac. President Castro. Isaac barely got the words out before the bodyguards slapped him several times, forcing him silent. Karen's expression darkened. She hadn't expected me to be this merciless. My dear wife, does it hurt to see this? As long as you say the word, I'll release him immediately. My tone remained calm, without the slightest hint of emotion. But Karen wasn't a fool. She understood the implication behind my words. Letting him go was possible, but the contract would bleed heavily. Letting Isaac suffer would not. Once he understood, Isaac looked at Karen with hope, as if expecting her to plead for him. But Karen didn't look at him at all. She lowered her head, clearly deep in thought. Hector, he's just a junior assistant. There's no need to take him seriously. Let's talk about the contract. I smiled, saying nothing. Isaac's face turned completely pale. He probably thought I was about to do something to him. He was overthinking it. It wasn't worth dirtying my hands over someone like him. Seeing my expression, my assistant, very perceptive, handed over 2 copies of the contract. Along with them, a baseball bat. Chapter 9. Karen Castro reached out and took the 2 contracts. The contents were largely the same. The only difference lay in the price the Castro family would have to pay. But no matter which one it was, the cost to the Castro family far exceeded what had been agreed upon before. Hector, what does this mean? Of course I'll choose the one with higher profits. A smile resurfaced on Karen's face. She was probably trying to defuse the awkwardness in the room that way. I pointed at the baseball bat beside her. Then you know how to use that, right? Before she could respond, I continued speaking on my own. The other one doesn't require that thing. I looked at Karen. A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she quickly steadied herself. Hector, you're really good at joking. Even now, she still wanted to brush it off. I shook my head. Then I reached out and played the video on my computer. The very one my assistant had shown me before. Other than that title, I can give you everything. What more could you possibly want? Hearing herself say those words on screen, Karen finally panicked. Hector, She stood up, trying to walk over to explain herself. I raised my hand to stop her. Karen, we've known each other since we were kids. You should know what kind of person I am. The contract wasn't signed under the original terms. That's a small punishment, for you and for the Castro family. As for how heavy it is, you get to choose. I let out a mocking smile and gave an order to the bodyguards. Release Assistant Isaac. The Castro family's internal affairs aren't our concern. The bodyguards moved with efficiency and immediately let Isaac go. Then they formed 2 lines, positioning themselves protectively around me. Were they afraid Isaac might lash out in desperation? No, they just didn't want his blood stinking up the place. Chapter 10. Karen's expression was complicated as she stared at me. After a long while, she finally spoke. Are you sure? This is really just going to end like this? Her face was filled with hope. I knew she wouldn't give up on this man. Today's choice was merely driven by fear of the Martinez family taking action. I shrugged and smiled indifferently. Karen, this is the first time I'm teaching you a lesson. From now on, Stay at home and behave yourself as Mrs. Martinez. If there's a next time, things won't pass so easily." She let out a sigh of relief, yet her eyes were full of calculation. From childhood to now, I had always been the kind of person who repaid every slight. This time was no exception. It was just that the Martinez family wasn't fully prepared yet. Swallowing up the Castro family would be a massive undertaking. I was no longer the second young master of the Martinez family who lived off others, and she was no longer the dazzling heiress she once was. Do it. Once the contract is signed, I still have things to take care of. Karen stood there in silence. This was my final ultimatum. She soon lifted her head. "Assistant Isaac, endure it for a bit. Someone will take you to the hospital afterward." With that, she swung the baseball bat without the slightest hesitation, smashing it down on Isaac's right leg. After more than a dozen blows, that leg was already deformed. Well, there was no remorse, but her ruthlessness was as consistent as ever. Then Karen had her assistant take him away. She sat at the table, said nothing, and signed the contract. In fact, I knew it. Even at this point, Karen still believed I was just throwing a tantrum. What I did today was completely out of character for me. She was convinced the Martinez family wouldn't allow me to go too far. After all, the Martinez and Castro families had been entangled for far too many years. One falling would mean the other wasn't far behind. The Castro family couldn't survive without Martinez capital, and the Martinez family likewise relied on Castro's support. As a second young master without inheritance rights, if I were smart enough, I should have known to turn a blind eye. Unfortunately for her, she still didn't understand. I had more than enough reasons to persuade my father and my elder brother. Otherwise, today would never have happened. Chapter 11. That evening, I went to the hospital with my people. No matter what, Isaac was a key part of my plan. What my father and elder brother cared about was that the Martinez family's business didn't suffer any losses. As for me, I was already tired of being the second young master of the Martinez family with no real power. Replacing the Castro family and taking control myself wasn't that far more appealing. Seeing me standing by the hospital bed, Isaac didn't dare to breathe too loudly. Lying there awkward and at a loss, Karen had been afraid I wouldn't be satisfied, so she hadn't held back at all. Although she avoided the knee, she still beat his lower leg badly enough to fracture it. His eyes were filled with resentment. Looks like he really was desperate to climb higher. From Karen's attitude alone, he knew exactly what he amounted to. I smiled and sat down beside him. The platinum bracelet was still on Isaac's wrist. Apparently, this was Karen's promise to him. Noticing my gaze, Isaac's expression grew more and more fearful. "Young Master Martinez, you've already punished me. Just tell me what you want, I'll do it. When my leg heals, I'll leave City A immediately." Before he could finish, I interrupted him. "I'm not going to force you to leave, Karen, but I have conditions." Isaac froze, clearly not expecting me to make such a proposal. I smiled. Young people would always be young. Even after seeing the extravagance of high society, they still didn't understand its rules. A toy that couldn't even make it onto the stage wouldn't know how it died. Even at the end. "Why you? What are you saying?" Isaac looked utterly incredulous. "I don't understand what you mean." I chuckled softly, keeping my tone as even as possible. "You're just a substitute. Without you, there will be others." Isaac looked even more confused. "But doesn't that mean she's cheating on you? And you're really this generous?" I smiled again. "What you're after is nothing more than money. So am I. No one ever complains about having too much of it. Besides, you've already put that mark on me. I won't touch that woman again. I'm saying this for no other reason than to tell you, we can cooperate. You keep your rich woman, and I take my assets." Isaac fell silent. At this point, if he still couldn't understand, he would truly be an idiot. Perhaps my calmness made him deeply uncomfortable. He said nothing. I didn't rush him, just waited quietly. He wouldn't refuse, and he had no reason to. After a long silence, Isaac finally spoke. "Fine, but you have to guarantee you'll never lay a hand on me again." I patted his shoulder and smiled in satisfaction. "I won't." Just a newly risen toy, controlling him was never difficult. I'd already said it before, his fate would be decided by the Castro family. "My assistant will contact you about what comes next." I stood up and turned to leave, so clean and decisive that Isaac could hardly believe it. Chapter 12. Over the next month, Karen came home early every day. All kinds of gifts followed. Watches I liked, ties, bespoke suits. It wasn't because she regretted anything. It was simply because the contract had been signed, but if the Martinez family wanted to tear it up, it wasn't impossible. That contract was far too important. If successful, it would completely cement the Castro family's position in City A. That was why, even at more than double the original cost, the Castro family was determined to secure it. "No need." I said what I said. "Go keep Isaac company. You're already tainted. I won't touch you again. But for the sake of cooperation between the two families, we won't interfere with each other from now on." Karen said nothing in response. After confirming that I meant every word, she left the villa and never came back. I didn't deliberately inquire about what the two of them were doing. The assistants would keep a tight watch for me. I had more important matters to handle. I was busy setting up multiple companies and gradually swallowing up the Castro Group's assets. In fact, during those 3 years of marriage, I had never been idle. I already had companies under my name, and using my identity as the Castro family's son-in-law, I had long since taken control of part of their business. That was also why Karen Castro dared to act so openly. In her eyes, the Martinez family's help was no longer essential to the Castro family, and I, the second young master of the Martinez family, without the identity of the Castro family's son-in-law, would have long been reduced to nothing. I shook my head, forcing those thoughts out of my mind. Children of wealthy families never treat the so-called true love that ordinary people spend their lives pursuing as their ultimate goal. Once I fully absorbed the Castro Group, I'd have more money than I could ever spend. What kind of woman would I not be able to have then? Chapter 13. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. With Isaac's help, the Castro Group looked powerful on the surface, but in reality, every part of its operations was already under my control. As for Isaac, he made a point of pleasing Karen. She doted on him more and more. Aside from the money Karen gave him, he also worked with me and pocketed a great deal of extra wealth. Watching the ever-growing number of digits in his bank balance made Isaac's eyes light up. Unfortunately for him, in order to keep him under control, although the account was in his name, the password was still in my hands. A pitiful creature like him didn't deserve to enjoy that much wealth. The current state of the Castro Group probably made Karen Castro uneasy. The Castro family had already realized something was wrong. They were still the nominal decision-makers of the group, but when it came to matters big and small, if a decision aligned with the interests of the Martinez Group, or more precisely, my interests, everything went smoothly. But the moment they tried to make changes, they ran straight into walls. Half a year after leaving home, Karen finally sent me a message of her own initiative. "Hector, let's make up." She didn't need to say it. I already knew it was time for us to meet. After all, I was ready. As long as I could persuade my father to cut off the Castro Group's cash flow, I was confident I could turn the Castro Group into the private property of the second young master of the Martinez family within a month. The moment I returned home, Karen came up to greet me. She smiled gently, as if she hadn't been the one who chose betrayal. Seeing that I didn't respond to her, she wasn't annoyed. Still just as gentle as ever, she took a document out of her bag and handed it to me. "I know that incident made you very unhappy, but it's already in the past. I think this document can resolve the issues between us." It was an equity transfer agreement. 10% of the Castro Group's shares, half of the shares Karen herself held. I smiled. So she did know what I wanted. But at this point, shares of the Castro Group meant nothing to me. I didn't take it. Instead, I pulled out the agreement I had prepared long ago and handed it to her. "Take a look. If you have no objections, just sign it." Karen took the document, sat down on the sofa, and remained stunned for a long time. The contents were very simple. 40% of the Castro Group's shares, transferred to me free of charge. That was all of the Castro family's shares, and for free. Only an idiot would agree to that. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke. "Hector, you know this was a marriage alliance. No matter how you retaliate against me, I can accept it, but the shares are different. This is the Castro family's final bottom line. I can give you 10%, and on top of that, 100 million from the Castro family's private assets. Let's settle this, all right?" Trying to fob me off like a beggar. I let out a scornful laugh and shook my head. At this point, she was still trying to bargain with me. I didn't bother being polite and issued my final ultimatum. "Karen, I'll give you 1 week to think it over. If you agree, I'll let you leave the country with all of the Castro family's private assets. Otherwise, you'll be left with nothing at all." Chapter 14. Hearing me stop disguising my intentions, Karen finally lost her composure. Even so, she didn't panic too much. After all, in her eyes, the Castro family was still extremely powerful. The Martinez Group hadn't openly moved against the Castro Group yet. What I said sounded more like a bluff, strong on the outside, weak within. After all, over the past 6 months, cooperation between the Martinez Group and the Castro Group had never shown any problems. All of this led the Castro family to believe that the acts of retaliation were merely my personal actions. Unfortunately for them, my arrangements were already complete. The Castro family was nothing more than meat on the chopping block. Seeing how resolute my attitude was, Karen finally grew anxious. "Hector, I understand that you're angry, but what's done is done. If you don't want this, I'll cut things off with Isaac. If you want to, you can even keep a few on the side." I cut her off directly. "Karen, have I given you too much face? You'd better have the Castro family sign this agreement. Otherwise, bear the consequences yourself. I'm still willing to let your family leave the country with their private assets. Keep pushing me, and you might not even keep that. Within the Castro family, Karen was not the only heir. It was only because she married me and leveraged the Martinez family's influence that she became the actual controller of the Castro group. Everything she had done was not unknown to the Castro elders. Yet not a single one of them stepped forward. They all pretended not to see, not to hear. I had been furious for a long time, eager to uproot the Castro family entirely. I wanted to eradicate them completely, yet worried about cornering a desperate enemy. To be honest, it had been a dilemma. Now that she was still trying to struggle, I didn't mind sending the entire family down with her. Karen fell silent. She picked up the agreement and flipped through it. Her face grew paler by the second. After a long while, she finally spoke, her voice full of sarcasm. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? You hollowed out the Castro group completely using so many shell companies. Karen had never been stupid. I let out a cold laugh. Karen, realizing it now is already too late. She remained silent for a long time, then lifted her head. Her eyes filled with despair. Was Isaac also one of your people? Had you already started plotting against the Castro group back then? I sneered. Isaac? No, he's not my man, and I didn't arrange for him to be by your side. I'm not interested in deliberately setting someone up to cuckold me. If you had behaved yourself, we would still be as we were before. As for your little assistant, all I did was get him to stand on the same side as me. See, no feelings can withstand the power of money. Karen's expression froze. I didn't want to waste any more words on her and handed the agreement to her again. Go back and get it signed as soon as possible. Drag this out any longer, and the Castro family will be left with nothing. Karen slipped the agreement into her bag and left in a daze, as if her soul had already departed her body. Chapter 15. After Karen left, Isaac began trying to contact me frequently through my assistant. It seemed my plan to make them turn on each other had already begun. Isaac was clearly agitated. I merely smiled and had my assistant calm him down for the time being. Someone who couldn't even recognize his own position still dreamed of climbing to the top. He had been taken in so easily, daring to bargain with a tiger for money that was never meant to be his in the first place. All I could say was that youth was wonderful, and incredibly easy to fool. All I needed to do was sit back and enjoy the show. What I didn't expect was that less than a week later, Karen could no longer hold out. She went to my family home and knelt on the floor to repent. My elder brother personally called me, telling me I had to come home, his tone full of schadenfreude. When I arrived, I saw Karen kneeling in the living room. In just a few days, she already looked much more haggard. It seemed that agreement had put enormous pressure on her, and the Castro family had been blaming her heavily. Earlier, Karen's parents had also called me, offering an apology that came half a year too late, then urging me to stop. Too little, too late. When she saw me enter, a spark returned to Karen's eyes. Hector. She tried to stand up, but after a moment's hesitation, she didn't dare. The pride she once had was gone, replaced by meek submission. My father signaled to me with his eyes not to speak recklessly. I knew what he was worried about, the Martinez family's business. These past 6 months of maneuvering had been almost entirely my own doing. Although the assistants he sent had been involved, there were still many things I had kept hidden from them. In the end, among elite families, there was never really such a thing as family affection. There were only interests. Even as a biological son, I could never be allowed to damage the family's interest. A son can always be replaced. Money, once lost, is much harder to earn back. My father and I went into the study. Before the door closed, Karen looked at me with pleading eyes. Hector, I really know I was wrong. As long as you forgive me, no matter what conditions you set, I'll agree. We can live properly together from now on. All right. I let out a cold laugh. How did this woman even have the nerve to say something like that? She hadn't come home for half a year, and now she was talking about living properly together. Did she think my place was a recycling center for trash? Karen, it seems the Castro family has no intention of signing the agreement. In that case, there's no need to sign it at all. With that, I walked straight into the study without another glance. Chapter 16. Inside the study, my father and I sat facing each other. Just as I had expected, he couldn't wait to know how we could carve the biggest possible piece of flesh off the Castro family. After hearing my plan, he both loved it and hated it. What he loved, of course, was that the Martinez family would reap enormous profits from this, no less than $3 billion. What he hated was that his own son hadn't told him the full truth until the very last second, and that assets worth well over $10 billion had already ended up in my hands. The Castro family has always been the Martinez group's most important partner. What you're doing puts me in a very difficult position. I looked at the men in front of me, my father, feeling a strange sense of unfamiliarity. Yet I wasn't surprised by his words at all. 3 years ago, wasn't it he who had told me to marry Karen? It could be said that in my miserable marriage, his role was no less significant than that of the Castro family. I didn't argue back. I waited until he finished speaking before calmly responding. Father, Wealth should stay within the family, no matter what. The Martinez group profits from this, and whether the Castro group is in my hands or yours, what's the difference? My father fell silent. Indeed, what he had always cared about was the Martinez group, not any individual. It was the same for my elder brother, and the same for me. Father, I guarantee that the Martinez group won't lose a single cent it deserves. As for everything else, that's what I've earned. The Martinez group takes no risk at all, it only needs to help me cut off the Castro group's capital chain. Chapter 17. This conversation between father and son ultimately ended with the Martinez group cutting off the Castro family's funding exactly as I had requested. For that, I paid an additional $100 million of my own money. I've been laying this out for a very long time, longer than you can imagine. Don't worry, I'll always be a member of the Martinez family, no matter what. When it comes to matters like this, family is always the most trustworthy. My father remained silent and said nothing more. When I came out of the study, Karen was still kneeling in the living room. Hector, you. Before she could finish, I cut her off coldly. Karen, sign it. Starting tomorrow, the Martinez family will cut off all cooperation with the Castro group. After tossing out that sentence, I directly ordered the bodyguards to remove her. Karen was thrown out in a daze. No matter how she knocked on the door afterward, no one responded. Chapter 18. The Castro family finally compromised. If the Martinez family truly moved against them, they would lose everything, even the shirts off their backs. On the day the agreement was signed, Karen grabbed my arm, her eyes full of resentment. Hector Martinez, you're truly ruthless. I gave you 3 years of my youth, and you don't feel even a shred of affection. It was just one small mistake, yet you destroyed me like this. I shook her off without hesitation. Karen, the moment your heart began calculating against the Martinez family, there was only one road left for us. She glared at me with hatred. Then what about the Castro family? I'm the one who wronged you. Why did you have to go after the Castro family as well? I let out a cold laugh and pierced straight through her lie. The Castro family, without the silent approval of those old foxes behind the scenes. Do you really think you'd have had the guts? Your Castro family has clearly grown too comfortable. Did you really think the Martinez family was something you could trample at will? When her lie was exposed so bluntly, Karen's face turned deathly pale. News of the Castro group changing hands quickly caused an uproar throughout City A. Many curious onlookers tried every means to dig into the truth, but I truly had no time to deal with them. I had now completely absorbed the Castro group, and there was far too much to take care of. Besides, although I had achieved my goal, the Castro family members themselves still hadn't been dealt with. Failing to eradicate the roots would only invite future trouble. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Isaac came looking for me. In a cafe, the current Isaac no longer had even a trace of his former smugness. Ever since Karen Castro found out that Isaac had helped me undermine the Castro group for money, his life had become miserable. What do you want with me? I asked. He took a sip of coffee, his expression bitter. I need your help. He gripped the cup tightly, his face full of panic. If my assistant's statistics were accurate, he had encountered at least 3 life-threatening incidents recently. All accidents, at least on the surface. Unfortunately, the probability of so many pure accidents was simply too low. I smiled faintly. Why should I? What benefit do I get from helping you? He clenched his teeth. After a long struggle, he finally spoke. I know what the Castro family is planning. I see. He knew how to read the room. I wasn't surprised. How could the Castro family possibly trust me? They were indeed planning to leave the country, but they would definitely do so while avoiding my line of sight. In that case, I didn't mind working with Isaac one more time. Go on, I said. What are your conditions? He hesitated, took another sip of coffee, then set the cup down. He looked extremely agitated. After a long while, he finally spoke hoarsely. I don't want much. Give me the money you previously transferred into my account, and send me abroad. Chapter 19. When I saw Karen again, it was already in Southeast Asia. To evade the Martinez family surveillance, the Castro family had really gone all out. They had actually gone to the southwestern border, crossed illegally with the help of local smugglers, and slipped into Southeast Asia. The original plan was to buy new identities there, then head to Europe and enjoy the rest of their lives. They never expected me to intercept them right there. When I arrived with my bodyguards, the Castro family still believed they had escaped to safety. Bang, bang, bang. Someone knocked on the door. When it opened and she saw it was me, Karen's face instantly changed. Why is it you? I shrugged and smiled gently. Won't you invite me in to sit for a while? She let out a self-mocking laugh and stepped aside. By now, she had already accepted her fate. The moment the bodyguards entered, they subdued everyone. The Castro family had completely given up. They were pressed to the ground by the bodyguards, forced to kneel. Hector, don't do anything rash. Even though this is overseas, it's still a city. The police will be here soon. Karen's father's voice trembled with fear. The bodyguards quickly taught them how to keep their mouths shut. I sat down on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and quietly watched them without saying a word. Karen knelt on the floor, crying bitterly. Hector, this was all my fault. Blame me alone if you must. After all, we're still husband and wife. If she hadn't said it, I would have forgotten. I had never even considered divorce. She cried miserably, begging over and over. I'm sorry, I was wrong. She lowered her head, but it was far too late. There was no longer any possibility left between us. If the Castro family wasn't completely dealt with, I would never feel at ease. The Martinez family had helped them back then. Yet the moment their family regained a bit of strength, their traitorous nature surfaced. Hector, I'm sorry. It wasn't until I lost everything that I realized you were the one who loved me the most. I thought I couldn't let go of Sean, so I found a substitute. I regret it. Please, just let me go. I'll do anything. Anything at all. Okay. She cried her heart out, but inside me, there wasn't the slightest ripple. Pity her? On what grounds? Because she put that mark on me? I looked at the woman before me coldly. Don't use Sean as an excuse. Back then, was it really that you couldn't find him? You were just afraid his family would keep dragging yours down. His family went bankrupt. He could no longer provide you with the life of a rich young lady, wasn't that it? From beginning to end, you were selfish. There was never anyone in your heart but yourself. Yes, Karen was selfish. She stayed with me only because the support I could give her far exceeded that of anyone else. I turned around and left them with my final words. Go see an old friend. He's been dying to see you. Chapter 20. I stood in a corner of the street. I watched Isaac enter the room, and before long, he was fighting with the Castro family. In the end, youth had the advantage. The Castro family members were quickly beaten to the ground. Ha ha ha. You wanted my life, then don't expect to live either. With that, Isaac shoved several of them out the window. The sudden fall triggered panic among the surrounding residents, and Isaac took the opportunity to escape. I knew that the deaths of a few foreigners who had entered illegally wouldn't cause much of a stir. I shook my head and patted Isaac on the shoulder. Don't worry, I'll do everything I promised. Take the passport and go abroad. Isaac left, expressing endless gratitude. He didn't see the cold smile on my face. Before I boarded the plane back home, my assistant respectfully showed me a piece of local news. A man from country A accidentally fell into the water while traveling and drowned.